Somewhere in northern Tanzania right now, a man is napping in the shade. He finished his work hours ago. He has no boss waiting on him, no emails, no rent due at the end of the month, no alarm that will drag him out of sleep tomorrow morning. He will wake when the sky tells him to. His name is Hadza, and he is living the way every single human being on this planet lived for 300,000 years. Not in poverty, not in misery, not surviving by the skin of his teeth. He is resting, unhurried, surrounded by people he has known his entire life, and every researcher who has ever lived alongside him and his people has come back saying the same thing. They look happier than we are. So before we talk about productivity hacks and morning routines and how to optimize your life, maybe we should ask a more uncomfortable question. What if we already had it right and then we gave it up? In 1968, an anthropologist named Richard Lee published something that quietly shook the entire field of social science. He had spent years with the Kung Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, tracking their time, down to the minute, every hour of every day accounted for. His total came to roughly 15 hours of work per week, not per day, per week. Ancient humans worked about 2.5 hours a day, hunting, gathering, cooking, every chore required to stay alive. Most of us hit that number before lunch, and then keep going for another 6 hours. Your ancestors did not have a boss. They did not pay rent. They did not have weekends because every day was already mostly a weekend, and they had almost none of the chronic diseases that are slowly killing the modern world. Sit with that for a moment. The people we call primitive, the people we look back at from our air-conditioned offices and feel quietly superior to. They were working 15 hours a week, sleeping when they were tired, eating when they were hungry, and laughing with their families more in one afternoon than most of us manage in an entire week. What exactly did we build again? Let's walk through their day, not as history, as a mirror. Sunrise. You wake to the sky getting lighter, the temperature shifting, the camp beginning to move around you. There is no alarm, no phone face down on a nightstand. You sleep on a hide laid over flattened grass near a small fire that someone fed during the night. Everything you own fits in a single bag. A digging stick, a bow, a few animal hides, maybe some beads made by someone you love. There are about 25 to 30 people in your camp. You know every single one of them. You have known them your entire life. Your grandmother sleeps a few feet from your children. Nobody is late for anything because there is nowhere to be. The first hour of the day is talking. Not scrolling, not checking, talking, sitting together, watching the light change while voices move back and forth across the fire. An anthropologist named Polly Wisner found that Bushmen spend hours every single day in casual conversation. But don't mistake that for idle chatter. That conversation is the operating system of the entire camp. Who is sleeping with whom? Who took more than their share yesterday? Who has been quiet for 3 days and might be getting sick? Who made a decision that affects everyone else? This is also the entire legal system. The way the Kung kept order was by talking about each other. If a man hoarded meat, people made jokes about him until he stopped. If a woman broke a promise, the whispers traveled to every camp within a day's walk. If you became truly unbearable, eventually, no camp would take you in. That was the harshest punishment a hunter-gatherer could face, and it almost never had to be used. In 1969, Richard Lee learned this lesson himself. He had been living with the Kung for years, and when Christmas came, he wanted to do something generous. He bought the biggest, fattest ox he could find and brought it to camp as a gift. The Kung made fun of it for weeks. They told him the animal was skinny. The meat would be terrible. He had wasted everyone's time. Lee was confused. He had inspected that ox carefully. It was excellent. So he finally asked an elder what was happening. The old man explained it plainly. When a Kung hunter brings home a big kill, the camp does not celebrate him. They mock the kill. They say the meat is poor. They complain. The bigger the kill, the harder they mock. Because that is how they keep their hunters from believing they are more important than anyone else. They had been doing exactly the same thing to Lee. He had brought a great gift, so they had to cut him down to size. In a Kung camp, no one is allowed to feel above anyone else. Every joke, every complaint, every whispered story, these are tiny tools for keeping people equal. We built prisons and courtrooms and entire legal systems to manage human hierarchy and selfishness. They handled it with conversation. Mid-morning, the men gather for the hunt. Hunting is dramatic. It is also deeply unreliable. A researcher named Frank Marlowe, who studied the Hadza for decades, found that on any given day, most hunters come home empty-handed. A successful kill might happen once every few days, sometimes less. A hunter might walk 20 miles, track a wounded animal for hours, lose it completely, and return to camp with nothing but a few small birds and a sore back. But when they do connect, they connect hard. Their arrows are tipped with poison, drawn from the sap of the desert rose. The hunter shoots, then tracks the animal for hours while the poison slowly works its way through. They have brought down everything from antelope to giraffe this way, and yet the hunters are not the ones who actually feed the camp. The women are. Among the Hadza, women provide more than half of all the calories the camp consumes. Every day, groups of 3 to 8 women go out together. They climb, they dig, they gather, and they return with steady, reliable food that does not depend on luck. That walk back is where most of the camp's real decisions happen. The conversations that actually shape things. The men feast you, the women feed you. And here is something that might be the most quietly extraordinary fact in all of this. The most productive gatherers in the camp are usually the grandmothers. Women in their 50s and 60s bring back more food per day than mothers in their 20s. Many of them are still walking 5 to 10 miles well into their 70s. Anthropologists call this the grandmother hypothesis. It is the leading theory for why human women are the only female primates in existence who live for decades past menopause. The idea is that grandmothers feeding their grandchildren made the entire species more successful. Your grandmother wasn't an afterthought in human history. She was the engine of it. The children don't go to school. They come along. A 3-year-old plays with a small digging stick next to her mother while her mother digs for the day's food. By 6, she can find food on her own. By 10, she is contributing meaningfully to the family's survival. An 8-year-old Hadza boy can be sent into the bush alone with a bow and come back with a bird. That is simply what an 8-year-old does. An anthropologist named David Lancy studied dozens of traditional communities and found that children spent most of their time in mixed-age playgroups. Older children taught younger ones. Adults rarely interfered. A child who fell was usually helped up by another child. A question was usually answered by a sibling. This is how human children learn for hundreds of thousands of years. Through watching, through copying, through playing at the work the adults were doing right beside them. This is the school human beings evolved to attend. Midday, the first food returns to camp, and it gets shared immediately, without negotiation. Sharing is not optional. It is a rule so deep it doesn't need to be spoken. If a Hadza man kills a large animal, he does not own that meat. He does not decide who deserves more. He distributes it, and the hunter himself often receives one of the worst cuts. The camp gets the rest. Anthropologists believe that this constant daily act of sharing is one of the forces that shaped the human brain into what it became. Because tracking who gave what to whom, who missed their turn, who stepped up when things were hard, who took more than was fair. That level of social arithmetic required a mind unlike any other animal has ever developed. Generosity was not charity. It was the savings account, the insurance policy, the social contract that kept everyone alive. Afternoon, the camp slows. The heat at midday is not worked through, it is rested in. People nap, they sit in the shade, they repair arrows, they weave grass into baskets. They pick through each other's hair in long, comfortable silences that would look strange to modern eyes, but are simply the physical closeness that human beings evolved to need. There is no guilt about this rest, no productivity app measuring how many minutes were spent not working, no background anxiety about what is being wasted. The middle of the day belongs to the body. Conflicts happen. These people are human. Affairs, old grudges, jealousy, stolen tools, tensions that build for weeks. But the way conflicts ended was different from ours in one fundamental way. In a culture where you can pack everything you own in 15 minutes and walk to the next camp, most disputes ended the same way. One person simply left. The Bushmen called this voting with your feet. If you couldn't stand someone, you walked somewhere else for a few weeks. By the time you returned, the heat had passed. The grudge had softened. The camp had moved on. Most of us cannot do that. Not with a mortgage, not with a job, not with a life so deeply anchored in one place that leaving it for a week feels like a disaster. So instead, we stay and we simmer. Late afternoon, the camp reconnects. People visit other camps a few miles away to see relatives, to trade information, to arrange marriages, to simply be in the presence of people they grew up knowing. The same handful of camps stay linked this way, year after year, generation after generation. By adulthood, a hunter-gatherer personally knows more than 100 people, every one of them by name, by history, by the specific way they laugh, not as followers, not as contacts in a phone, as people. The hunters return, some days with a kill, most days without, and the women who gathered steadily all day quietly become the heroes of the evening, as they have been on most evenings for the last 300,000 years. Cooking begins, roots roasting in coals, meat boiling in pouches with hot stones, fruit split open, seeds chewed soft for the small children, and then the meal, the whole camp, together, as they have been every night since before language had a word for together. This is not paradise. Let's be honest about that. They get sick, they lose children. The heads once buried roughly 4 out of every 10 children before the age of 5. They grieve like anyone who has ever loved something. They fight, they suffer. Nobody is suggesting we go back. We made real trades, vaccines, antibiotics, indoor plumbing, refrigeration, lives that stretch into decades our ancestors never reached. The nearly complete elimination of children dying before they can form memories. These are genuine victories of human ingenuity, and they matter enormously. But we also made trades we don't talk about. We invented agriculture, and with it, work that someone else owns. We invented bosses. We invented rent. We invented the calendar, and the clock, and the performance review, and the Sunday night dread of Monday morning. And somewhere in all of that, something got quietly lost. In the late 1960s, an anthropologist named Marshall Salins looked at all of this evidence and called early human societies the original affluent society. He didn't mean they had wealth, they had almost nothing. He meant they had something we spend enormous amounts of money trying to buy back: time. And the astonishing thing is this: you inherited their body, literally. The same nervous system that woke with the sun and spent its afternoons in the shade. The same brain that was built for unhurried conversation around a fire. The same deep biological need for sunlight, sleep, physical touch, and time spent doing genuinely nothing. You are a hunter-gatherer. You just stopped hunting and gathering, and maybe that quiet mismatch between the ancient animal you are and the modern world you are trying to survive is the source of more of your exhaustion than you have ever been told. The Hodza man is still napping in the shade in northern Tanzania, and somewhere far from him, you are reading this on a glowing screen behind a wall under artificial light, waiting for a calendar notification to tell you when you're allowed to stop.